understood it as the years have passed, is central to understanding two things. First of all, why society is structured as it is, which we're going to get into in this part, and also, as we'll get into the final part, how and why we can open the door and bring an end to this nonsense. So what I'm going to talk about in this section is some of the rather bizarre background I've just need, and going into present-day events and how that pans out across what's happening now. So the idea is to introduce, obviously, a big brother global society, very much in the global terms of 1984. And this is the basic structure they're looking for. And I'm going to go through a series in this section of what I call coordinates. We know the coordinates, the world starts to make sense, and what's happening in the world makes sense, because if you know the outcome that is wanted, you can understand the sequences of events that is taking us there, and we can understand there how we can intervene in that. So this is the structure. Very simply, if there's the few and you're going to control the many, you have to centralize decision-making. Because the more points of decision-making there are, the more diversity of decision-making, the less control you're going to have over those decisions. It's like in the old days when I was a kid. They used to have lots of acts where they had people keeping plates spinning on sticks, loads of them all over the stage. And if you have too many plates and too many sticks, too many points of decision-making, then you have plates crashing all over the place. You can't keep control of it. What you want really is one big plate and one big stick, which keep that going forever from a central point. That's the idea. And they want a structure with a world government that would dictate to every country in the world, a world central bank. I'll get into this more in this section. That's fundamentally, not only, but fundamentally one of the reasons for the engineered economic collapse. They want a one world currency, electronic money, no cash, fundamental implications for freedom in that, a world army which would impose the will of the world government on any country that didn't want to accept it, and a microchip population connected to a global computer and the global positioning satellite system. Under that, they want the super states, get into this more later, and under that, they want to break nation states up into regions, which they're already in the process of moving towards, to deunify in a unified response to the edifice of power above. So that's the basic structure. And once we realize that's the outcome they want, you can start to read the world and world events in a very different way. But what I would emphasize is I'm now going to talk about the play-out world, the world as it unfolds in the daily experience. But the fundamental behind it is what we were talking about earlier. The whole thing is about manipulating the way we decode reality, what we experience through the way we perceive the virtual reality game, to stop us understanding that we are consciousness, to put us in the eggshells of little me, and to manipulate the way that we our heads world. That's all the way running through everything. So, once upon a virtual reality, I'm going to just go through a sequence of events that kind of brought us to where we are now. And I'll pick it up in this period, I don't know, 12,000 years ago, maybe more, where there are so many stories and myths. I think it's about 2,000 books in print, I was reading somewhere, about Atlantis and these civilizations, of advanced civilizations, which existed in what is to conventional history, prehistory. And these civilizations were destroyed by vast cataclysmic events, which you can see recorded in the ancient texts and verbal histories of every single ancient culture. Of course, the famous one in the Bible is the Great Flood and all that stuff, but that is mirrored in ancient cultures all over the world. This great cataclysmic period of geological and upheavals, and volcanic upheavals. And there's a very good book called When the Earth Nearly Died, or The Day the Earth Nearly Died, where the researchers have looked at the myths, or what we call myths, of all these stories around the world of the great cataclysmic events, and then they've looked at the biological and geological evidence to see if it supports the stories in the myths. And it does, very, very compellingly. And, of course, like I say, Noah and the biblical story of the Great Flood is the most famous one, but you take that back to its origin, or at least one of its origins, and you go back into ancient Sumer long before, where the same story was told, but it's told everywhere. Now, 98% of what I'm talking about today is come from hard research. Where it hasn't, I'll tell you. And I'd got to a certain point of taking this back from the physical to trying to get an understanding of what was behind these cataclysmic events, and actually what's behind this crazy world, which at one time was not crazy. Probably not that long ago was not crazy. Again, one of the other common themes is that before the cataclysmic events, there was what is often referred to as a golden age of great harmony and a great abundance, when it was almost like a utopian world. And then the cataclysmic events came and everything changed. And I was in America at a place called Sedona in Arizona about 2 months ago. Well, maybe less than that anyway, not that it matters. And I went into this, shall we say, other state of consciousness. For many, many years, I've been going into coma-like states where it's just like unbelievably deep, and sometimes it takes a half an hour, 45 minutes to come out of them very, very slowly. But what suddenly happened in the last few weeks since the turn of the year is I'm going into these deep states, but I'm holding consciousness when I go there. And what happened to me as I went into one of these states just a few weeks ago, I never talked about this before, funnily enough, and this kind of voice started talking to me about what the cataclysmic events were all about and what this situation in the world is all about. And I can only give it you and take it as you will. And what it was that at one point, well, actually, not just at one point, but up to the point where these cataclysmic events happened, the energy field of this Earth and further out was extremely harmonious, extremely balanced, vibrating in a very balanced, harmonious way. And this manifested down to the physical, into the decoded world, as a balanced, loving, abundant, sharing, caring society, which was vastly, vastly different to the way it is now. And what I was then shown, and what the voice referred to as the schism, happened. And what I saw, I found this picture on the internet, which kind of gives a feel for it. What I saw as this voice was talking about the schism was a harmonious energy field, and then through the center of it went this bright blue, like electrical charge, almost like lightning. And everything started vibrating in a chaotic way. And it called it the schism. And as this manifested down through the vibrationals into the decoded world, it manifested itself as a physical version of this schism, which was massive geological events, which not only transformed this reality, or this part of this reality physically in the way that's recorded by the ancients and through to the present day, but it fundamentally changed this reality mentally and emotionally, because suddenly we were living in a chaotic energy environment which was being decoded into the physical, and suddenly the chaos and conflict of the schism was manifesting itself as chaotic and conflict and all the rest of it that started to come into the world. And